Well, hello, folks, and welcome. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. I am back with a wonderful, wonderful guest. You are going to enjoy this conversation to the max. I've been so fortunate in meeting people uh, who have gifts and talents and uh, are willing to share their stories. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Joshua Lee. Hi, Joshua.
Hey Emma, how are you?
I'm doing great on this beautiful spring afternoon. It's warm out.
Real nice, yes.
Yeah, yeah. We're in Baltimore and
Mhm.
can change in a flash, but right now we're having
Yeah, right. Just
a
wait a few minutes.
yeah. Yes, we will. Um, I'm so glad you had time from your busy schedule, and you are truly a busy human being to share uh, your conversation and to uplift the viewers with some interesting stories. But first, before we talk about the things you're specifically going to share, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Mm. So I am the youngest son of six to Thelma Lee and David Lee Sr. And I have one sister who's about 16 months older than me and four older brothers. Um, I have a personal and professional commitment to help humanity win. And that's what I've been doing for the past 30, 40 years. Of course, earlier in my young adult life, older adolescent life, I really didn't know what that meant, but I really came into that as I've gotten older and as I have, enjoyed the life's ebbs and flows. I have five daughters. I usually pause a moment and allow people to react to that. And usually it's like, oh, God bless you, brother. So I've come to,
Daughters
huh?
and beautiful daughters, gorgeous.
Yes, yes. And I say that yes, they are bigger than the average bear. And yes, I have a shotgun. Uh, they all have J names after, me. And I have five grandchildren, and they all have J names.
Hmm.
And a couple years ago, she had given birth to her child, her latest child at that time, and she's like, "Dang, Uncle Joshua, you got all the J names." I was like, "Get your own alphabet."
Well, you've had quite an influence.
Yes. Um, yeah, it's been really, a grand ride, called life. There's no top to this mountain called life. And, I keep getting back into the game, as it were, to keep climbing that mountain and not resting on my laurels and just enjoying life. The older I get, the more I'm really get present to legacy, leaving a legacy, both within my family and in the world.
Well, I will say this, the thing that has impressed me about you is your connectivity to people. Um, clearly within your family, as evidenced by everybody having those J names, you are having an impact. But the thing that's so impressive to me is how you're able to just reach into the community. And when I first became aware of the work that you were doing in the community, at that point, you were actually going into barbershops.
Mhm.
So would you like to share a little bit about what that period of your life looked like?
Yeah, wow, that was a while ago before going into barbershops was very popular and in vogue, right? So this we're talking 2006, around that time. Um, I was working as a social worker at that time, and I had a conversation with one of my older brothers who felt like our dad was he was a bad person, right? As you get older, you really again, I'm the youngest, so I really didn't see much of some of the things he spoke of. I felt like I caught hell, from my dad, and I can't imagine what they went through because he was a very complex guy, complex man, very revered in the community, but he was a hellion at home. And, he had an entrepreneurial spirit and became a serial entrepreneur. Um, and what I mean by that is that he, with a third grade education, I believe he never mentioned these words, he never spoke these words, but the way he went about his life from my vantage point was that can't be that bad. I'll just give it a try. And so he would sell. We would sell within our family ice cream cones and snowballs and French fries, and he built a pit outside of our home and would go down to the country where he was from, bring back this big old hog or two, and spend overnight just cooking that thing, and would just and he would sell the meat, right? Um, Taught himself photography, taught himself construction. He helped build uh, our home. And again, with a third grade education, he amassed a
Say,
huge transportation company.
oh, all right. Well, say a little bit about your community too, so we can get a feel for what that was like.
Yeah, so I grew up in Walbrook Junction in Baltimore, the west side of Baltimore. It was a very tight-knit community. I would say we were middle to upper middle class at that time. I'm 57 now, so we're talking mid to late 60s when I was born and onward. Was able to run around my house. Um, I say that in the context of when I got my first job and I started working in East Baltimore. Um, People, because of row houses, couldn't run around their houses. You know what I mean? So that to me was very strange. Not much greenery around and so forth, right? So this big contrast between East and West Baltimore. So I'm 23 years old, working in East Baltimore. And as soon as if you're familiar with Baltimore, North Avenue and Charles Streets is like the north-south, east-west lines that divide the city. And as soon as you get across Charles Street, there's a different rhythm. There's a different, beat that people walk to and live by. And I got a chance to experience that for about 7 years or more living in working in East Baltimore. Not good or bad, or gooder or better, right? But just different,
Okay.
right? And was working with young people in a mentoring program, and I grew up with them, I say. They were 6 and 7 years old, and I was 23,
Okay.
and stayed with them for 7 years in a mentoring program. So the contrast between how I grew up and how they lived and how they grew up was a bit different. But I really appreciated the experience and the connections and relationships I still have today with those families.
And and then getting back to your father, he was able to. You said he had this entrepreneurial spirit, and
Yes.
he developed his own transportation company.
Hmm.
Say a bit more about that.
Yeah. So again, being the youngest, I didn't know. I just knew mom stayed home. She did the managerial stuff, as it were, the office related things, and he was out in the streets. And we started with minivans, and we would go. The best thing I recall is that we would go during the summer to Hershey Park and King's Dominion and, things like that with family and neighborhood friends. So I really enjoyed that. And then the vehicles just kept coming. They're, motor coaches and big yellow buses. And, he eventually had to move the buses to, I believe, in Ricestown and Park Heights, where there is a lot where he kept his vehicles there. And so I grew up in that sort of environment where, you know, he taught us how to provide for a family. And again, I believe he had the idea that can't be that bad. Let me try it out. So, he did it, right? And again, was very well respected in the community and in church and so forth.
Mhm.
And I believe I follow in that vein, in his footsteps in that way, as I have as a professional therapist and now coach, that I've been out on my own for some time now, and connecting with people in communities. You mentioned that a little while ago, and I just love the human spirit, right? My mother used to say, "There's nobody better than you, and there's nobody worse than you."
Mm,
She used to tell me that, and that's what I've passed on to my children.
mm. Well, it's interesting. Your parents both inspired you in different kinds of ways, clearly. And you mentioned the dichotomy that your father displayed between the community and how he behaved at home. But did you doubt or did you have any concerns about his love for you? Did you feel that, what was motivating him to behave?
Yeah, to behave, and yeah, so um so again, I'm 50. I was raised in the 60s, so fathers, men, I believe, did not really express and share, at least the way they shared, and the way they shared their love is through doing, right, and providing. And there weren't many days where I went without. In fact, being the youngest, I thought I could get anything and everything I wanted,
Okay.
right? Some people would say I was spoiled. Imagine that. Um, and I do believe that being the youngest, my mom intentionally made some decisions regarding the path that I would take, um, and that, um, some of my experiences, seminal childhood experiences, were different than my siblings. Right. So, for example, I would spend a week or two in an overnight camping program during the summer. None of them had that experience. I was sent to a different school, junior high school back then they were called, than any of my other siblings. I actually used my aunt's address to go to Calverton Junior High School. Totally different. Everyone else went locally. And so my path was a bit different, and I felt somewhat like I describe it as these are the fingers are my sibling group, and I'm the thumb, right? Just felt like I was different, looked different, functioned differently, just had these different experiences. And so um, didn't really, I was into sports, and, I went away to college, and none of them had those experiences.
Well, this is interesting to me because you couch your childhood as clearly solidly middle class. Your father was a third grade education, was
Mhm.
able to really handle the system, and he had mastery to be able to develop a business that seems like it was vital and vibrant. So that leads me to the barbershop. Um, so you spent time working with mentoring young people, girls and boys, or mostly boys.
Yes,
Okay,
girls and boys. Hmm.
girls and boys, and so that clearly has an influence on your thinking. And then you have this, I guess, dichotomy that you see expressed by your father, uh,
Yeah.
in the house, out the house, and support from your mom. And now you've got what you consider a somewhat different experience from your siblings
Hmm.
that leads you to fill in the blank.
Yeah, that leads me to um, being involved with people in community. I think my dad, at his core, at his foundation, was a community-minded person. There weren't many periods of time where there was not a relative who stayed with us, who lived with us, right? Older uncle or cousin, even next door there was a family where for some reason the parents were no longer there, and the boys, they were teenagers. My dad sort of took them in, made sure they had um, they stayed because they were next door, and they stayed in the home, but we watched out for them, right? And we sort of grew up with them, and whatever bad things we did and they were around, they got it too,
Mm,
right? He was equal opportunist in that way, right? I still don't know where Chucky is. Chucky was one of my friends who I got in trouble with. He was a little older than me, and I followed him to the grocery store, and we were hungry coming from Park Pool. We had spent the day out at Druid Hill Park, and we landed at the grocery store at Mondawmin Mall, and he was like, "Well, follow me, just do what I do." So he goes down an aisle and opens up a box of Twinkies and just stuffs it in his mouth. I was like, "Oh, okay, that may not be too bad." And so it was my turn. And it seemed like it was in slow motion. I unpacked the box, unpacked the wrapper, and I went to put it in my mouth. And then I saw a manager down the aisle. And that sweet, typically sweet Twinkie was the nastiest thing I had. It seemed like
okay.
I couldn't swallow it, and I started sweating. So Chucky ran to the door. He was
Mhm.
apprehended, and then I walked there. He was like, come on, buddy. I know your dad." And I was like, "Please take me to jail. I don't want."
Oh my goodness.
I do not want. Don't call him. Call the police, please.
Uh,
And so he came and took us home, and he picked up a hose and started wielding that thing. And again, I don't know to this day where Chucky is, because he whacked him too, and Chucky was off and running.
the last you saw of your friend.
Um, yeah, yeah. Last time I saw my friend.
So your dad made
Like,
an impression.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so being, out there, people knowing him, that's where I believe that, um, I got the notion that community was just as important as family.
Hmm.
And even when the um, school buses and um, motor coaches went away, Dad bought Mr. Softy ice cream trucks. Right?
Okay. Okay.
So I'm in junior high school, and I'm working on coming home from school, and I'm working on the ice cream truck, right? So it's a way to interact with people and also to earn income and, earn money. So I had bunches of coins and so forth, right? So really got a notion that working hard for what you get is important to be able to provide for family and at the same time connect with other people,
Mhm. And so
right?
you carried that philosophy forward. And so what does that look like for you now?
Well, I want to, so you mentioned a barbershop. So going into the barbershops, I'll come back up to now,
Okay.
um, was an opportunity to use my skill set and my passion for helping people, right? Because what I knew that and even within our own family, there was undiagnosed and certainly untreated mental illness. There were, drugs and alcohol being consumed. My eldest brother is someone who experiences mental illness for over the last 40, 50 years. So I was committed to doing something about that, or at least at a very minimum, understanding what that whole thing was about, the mental illness piece. And so I committed my life to serving others. And the barbershop was a way to be able to do that. I created a project. I think it was called back then Haircuts and Healing Conversations, right? Where I gathered a cadre of mental health professionals and substance abuse professionals, and we went into the historically um, Black institution called a barbershop. Those folks are unlicensed counselors,
Mhm.
right? And people share their stories and I don't know how much advice they give or patrons get, but they come back. They trust the barber. The barber is a trusted figure in the Black community. And so we went around Baltimore and sort of engaged people in barbershops.
What,
And we left resources. Yes.
okay. And what was that like? Describe a typical barbershop session.
Yeah. So we would go in advance and make arrangements. On this particular day, we come in. You have some responsibilities, Mr. Barbershop owner, just as we have responsibility. Let everybody know that on this particular day, we're coming in for several hours to interact and engage with you, and just let the community know. So, and it was videotaped. Right. So let folks know that these conversations and discussions will be videotaped, and we're going to leave resources. Those resources were a list of whatever we felt the need was, or the barbers felt like they needed in their community as they listened to their patrons' situations. So resources such as mental health, um, providers, right? Abuse providers and other resources like that, connections with. In fact, we had some of those folks to go in with us, and they gave out their cards and so forth. Fast forward to 2015 when the uprising occurred in Baltimore. Um, I had stopped doing it prior to that, but I felt compelled to go back into the barbershop,
Okay, let
right?
me just interrupt for a second. I just
Hmm.
want to clarify for those who may not know, the uprising refers to the death of Freddie Gray, who was a Baltimore citizen, young man who was arrested by the police and sustained injuries while he was in custody with the police. And as a result, never recovered, passed away. And his death triggered a very visceral reaction from the community. Um, People were really distraught and upset about Freddie Gray's treatment. And it's not that it was that unusual, but it was publicized. Um, what actually were you able to accomplish by going back into the
Yeah, so going back into the barbershop and again listening to people's stories about their experiences with police and the level of frustration and upset that they experienced during the Freddie Gray event, right? And what I've learned is, you give people opportunities to share what's troubling them, what is, been problematic for them. They can actually come up with their own resolutions to these issues, right? So it's not about that I have the answer or the people who are with me have the answer. It's giving people the opportunity. I'll tell this quick story. So I'm in Park Heights at a barbershop where we've been there. In fact, there were people contacting me in other parts of the country saying, "Hey, we heard about what you're doing in Baltimore. Can we come and observe?" So there was a psychiatrist, Black female psychiatrist from Chicago who actually was in town, and she came on one of our visits. So this young man, I would say in his early 30s, he's upset because I'm trying to recall, realized that someone who had done something to a family member, he now ran across them in the community. He knows where he hangs out, he knows where he lives. And so he's sharing this account like he wants to seek retribution on him, right? And then there's a row of seats with people waiting to be seen, to get their haircuts. And it just seemed like there was this, I'll use the word uprising again, but it was of concern. Like, yo, you don't want to do this because it's going to ruin your life as well. You're trying to seek revenge, but in the end, your life is ruined and, your family's life is ruined as well. So they talked him down, talked him off the ledge, as it were. And he was like, you know what? I think y'all right. I think y'all right. Right. So he, remains to be seen, but at least that interaction, that encounter that was had in the barbershop was enough to at least squelch, albeit temporarily, this guy's desire to seek retribution. Right? And now, everybody's gone into the barbershop. LeBron James has a show about, situated in a barbershop and so forth, right? So the barber shops have become public health distribution centers, right? Where medical professionals have contacted them to say, "Hey, we've noticed this um, upward trend or this negative trend in your community around, mental illness or cancer or some of these other, real serious health conditions. We'd like to have you be sort of a liaison between us, the medical professionals, and your clientele." Right. So there are movements afoot that have been very positive and instrumental in utilizing the resources of hospitals like Johns Hopkins and so forth within the Black community.
That is all very interesting. And I'm wondering, I noticed you said that initially you were recording these sessions. How are you able to, well, first of all, you know, lots of times people knowing that someone's going to record them causes them not to want to share anything.
Yeah.
So, but clearly that didn't happen here. So what how do you use that recording? How does that benefit either you and or the community?
Well, I think it, at a very minimum, is becomes an archival sort of instrument where people can look back on these conversations. And we've had like sort of anniversary, um, visits going back into the community, the city, Baltimore City, one of the family and children department heads got in touch with me and said, "Hey, Father's Day is coming. I don't have money necessarily to offer like gift cards or whatever, but I have a food budget." And so he allowed me to order food to take into the barbershop, and people came in, and because they knew the protocol was that we have this contract, if you will, sort of an agreement, right, about posting our the date for us to come in. You do your people, right? We're coming in as visitors, letting them know that it is going to be recorded. And if someone comes in and says that they don't want to be recorded, we just don't videotape them, right? The cameraman stays away in that regard. Um, and I have a lot of stories, Emma. So just tell me like enough is enough. But I did receive a call from a barbershop in East Baltimore. He said, "Man, we're hurting over here." I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He said, "One of our long-standing patrons just killed himself, right? But before he did that, he killed his two young sons as well."
My.
And so you can imagine how, and he said they were just in here the other day.
Mm.
You can imagine how sorrowful and hurt this community was. And so I galvanized some social workers and mental health professionals, and we went there. This time I'm um, skilled with what's called action methods, right? These are ways of engaging people, not just verbally or, having a sit down conversation, but in action. And so we went there, and um, the team and I engaged everybody who came in, right? We were there the entire day. And this one guy came in and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And so he comes in and he jumps into the conversation very readily and heartily. And so I had set up, as we wound down, two empty chairs facing each other, Emma, several feet apart, right? And so with these action methods, and you may be familiar with the concept called the empty chair, right? The empty chair becomes a projective instrument where people can have a conversation with someone, in absentia,
Got it.
right? And so I set up the two chairs, and I was like, okay, now we can have a conversation. Who do you want to leave a comment to in your life? Nobody moved, so I knew I had to model what I wanted to have happen. And so I sat down first, and I'm facing the empty chair, and I tell everybody that I'm putting my dad in the empty chair. My dad has been deceased probably a decade at that point.
Okay.
And I said, "Dad, I thank you for giving me life, and I forgive you for making it a living hell." Right? Then I get up, and then all of a sudden, the one guy who didn't know why he was there, he actually said that at the end. He said, "I don't even know why I came this way to go get my hair cut, right? But I'm glad I'm here." He jumps in the chair, and he immediately starts to have this, starts to talk. And I go, "Wait a minute, hold on 1 second. Who's in the other chair?" He says, "God is in the other chair." And I slowly stepped back, and I was like, "You got it." And so he reached down as if he was tying his shoe. not sure what that really was about. Maybe it was an opportunity to sort of take a deep breath and just when he came back up, he's like, God, I thank you for, saving me from the streets. I thank you for, saving me from childhood abuse and neglect and drugs and alcohol. Thank you for saving me from jail. I just got out not too long ago, and I want to get my life together. And, he just goes on, and he just gets up and walks out the barbershop. And everybody is sort of like stunned, looking around. And then they just gave him a standing ovation.
Mm.
Right. And then others joined in as well. Right. So, the power of making it safe enough for people to share what they've long been holding on to, right? We don't necessarily call it therapy. We can't legally, ethically call it therapy, but it's an opportunity to have a conversation with people, a guided sort of contained conversation with people, and you never know what they've been walking around with in their hearts and their minds, right? So I really appreciate being able to go and engage. And again, I think of my dad when I think of these kind of opportunities to interact with people.
Well, I have seen you conduct a empty chair session, and you did it at the church we both attend, One God, One Thought Center for Better Living in Baltimore.
Yes.
And it is not only transformative for the person who is sitting opposite the empty chair, because it ceases to be an empty chair. It is transformative for everyone who is in that space and can witness the exchange. Um, Really, it is almost like a divine gift, because everyone gets transported from the physical space where they are into the consciousness of the person who is having that conversation. And
Yes.
it's so real and so unencumbered by all the stuff that we deal with is in society. Everything falls away, and there's such direct communication.
Mhm.
We all, when it's over, everyone is enlightened and appreciative. There's a kind of quiet joy that comes along with that, because you've been privy to something very personal and very special.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've also seen the person in the chair get up like a different, literally with weight off of their shoulders. It is an uh, amazing expression of humanity, and I would say it's spiritual as well.
Yes.
It depends, your point of view, but clearly something is going on for everyone who has the privilege of being in an environment where that is happening. And so I want to commend you and thank you for making that happen in so many places. Um, I see you as really the pebble that's being dropped into the pond, and the ripple effects just keep going on and on and on.
Mhm.
So it's a wonderful thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
just,
Just sorry, you wanted to say?
no, go ahead.
Well, just a little bit about psychodrama, right? It is a psychodrama as a therapeutic modality for group psychotherapy. And again, I've used it in non-clinical settings as well as clinical settings. And if we break those two parts of the word, psycho meaning soul, if we take the Latin root of that word, and then drama being action. And so you have action of the soul, or the soul in action. So it really is a spiritual experience, right? Where because we are walking, talking projectors, right? Where we project our internal environment on people, both positively and negatively. That's, and then you pull up an empty chair. And, I was in a barber shop talking to the barber, and he just going on and on about, yeah, he's excited about what's happening. And then I said, instead of talking about something, you can actually talk to something, someone, something, right? So he had an empty barber chair next to him, and he sort of wasn't understanding when I said talk to that person, right? And so when I just simply turned the chair towards him, he got locked into like there is somebody there who he was having a conversation with, right? And it does seem magical, but it is, that what we've internalized, we can now externalize it, right? So making the invisible visible, right? As in that way, right?
I
And it is very moving.
it is, and what just occurred to me is that people tend to do something very similar to that with people who are deceased by going to grave sites and visiting that space and having those kinds of conversations often. Folks will do that, but I don't necessarily get the sense that it is as um, healing, and maybe it can be, but
Yeah, it
this
certainly can be.
it can be.
Hmm.
But this, the way it's set up with an empty chair, allows you, gives you the power to release whatever it is that you're holding on to and to project it. And you say in a safe environment. And I think the fact that you are able to clearly communicate to everyone that we have a group responsibility for that safety so that other people have the same sort of supportive mindset is encouraging to the speaker. I just think that's, magnificent work. Um, just really, you're just a walking blessing. You need to be commended for having the insight and the ability to follow through. A lot of good ideas don't get expressed, but you.
Yeah, you're right. And for me, it was sort of a natural progression, as I said, 23 years old, working in East Baltimore. I was working with elementary school children, stayed with them until they graduated from middle school. So, I had to be very creative in how I interacted with them in an after school program, the summer program with the same cohort of young people for 7 years. And then I had the great privilege of working with young men who were in group homes. And
Mm,
let me tell you, Emma, they will not sit and talk to you across the table about how they feel and what they think, right? And so I really had to become very creative. You see that trash can over there? I'm gonna ball this paper up. If you shoot it and make it, you don't have to give me a feeling word, or you don't even have to participate tonight. But if you miss it, right, you got to give me a feeling word, and we're going to have this, 60-minute session, right? We go outside and toss balls around and so forth. So psychodrama became an extension of that, right? I can, you know, have objects and toys and stuff, and I'm working with adults now. Oh my goodness, I'm like in heaven, right? But it's
mm,
this whole theoretical framework that goes with it as well. And I've been at this for the last 15 years, right? To include my own counseling and coaching model that I created called the Game Plan for Better Living,
mhm,
right? Where I use the language and metaphor of sports to engage people in how they have sort of created their lives, right? We all have a mental model that we operate from, and the game plan gives people an opportunity to see how they have sort of developed their armor, if you will, in just living, right? Through challenging times and so forth, and how those decisions as a child oftentimes show up in stressful and challenging ways as an adult,
Mhm.
right? Um, and I have this basic framework of the game plan where I use a little like a square, right? And it's at each corner, it's fans, coaches, referees, and teammates. Now, you don't have to know anything about sports, particularly these days, to understand this model. It's a metaphor. Like my 7 and 8 year old grandchildren know like these concepts. Who's your fan, right? Friends, family, whatever. Biggest fan, number one fan, fan from day one, that whole thing. Like, who's your coach? Who do you allow to coach you, right? And you can say, mom, my teacher. I developed this when I was working with um, middle and high school students who were in a alternative school, right? And they were very crafty and downright ingenious in ways, right? Um, and they knew exactly what to say to their fans and referees called the judge or the probation officer or grandmom or whomever, right, to get them off their backs. They knew exactly what to say. And so during that honeymoon period of the first week or two to 30 days, they come in and say, I'm doing all these things the right way, right? I'm going to come to school, get my grades up, stay out of trouble so I can get back to my regular school. So, as a former educator, right?
Right.
That honeymoon period, uh, it goes away and then they resort back to their previous behaviors
Yeah.
that got them in trouble. And then one day I was like, huh, what game are you really playing, son? Right. And that was sort of the birth of the game plan, later added on for better living, where I started working with their parents. I started working with other adults, professionals. And at this point, thousands of people been exposed to the game plan model, because as a metaphor, we get underneath the sort of facade and the masks that people typically wear. And there's a core set of questions like whenever there is a performance gap, that is the difference between where you optimally like to be operating with any aspect of your life, be it as a parent, as a student, as a worker, right? Someone who's working inside of a job. Whenever there's this performance gap where you're currently working, I say that you're playing a game, right? So I have to tell you this. Yeah, I usually get that look like I ain't playing no game. People, I can see it in their heads, right? So I'm working with homeless men downtown, and I literally had to say what I'm about to say to you, Emma, at least 10 times, right? So he was like, no, Mr. Joshua, I ain't playing no more games. That's what got me here. As I said, no, okay, cool. I'm glad to hear that. But here's my context for game. It is a core set of beliefs that has corresponding thoughts, feelings, and actions that govern your behavior. Just as shortly as you're playing Monopoly or basketball or soccer or whatever, there are rules to the game. And these guys came from the streets, so there were rules out there that they had to survive on. These are games of life, right? Rules of life, right? And so I said that 10 times until he was like, oh, I get it, right? Like I'm not being manipulative. I'm not being, someone who's trying to get over on people. But this is how I used to live, was that way. Now I can play this new game, right? That I can win and get different results from, right? So whenever there's this performance gap, it's like, what game are you really playing? Well, I'm playing the, you know, um, get my life together, get my life right game now, right? And so how was it before? I was playing I didn't give a daggone game. And so I got those results. But now that I'm coming off the streets and trying to get my life together, um, yeah, I am the player. I am the author. I am the one who has the agency to be able to make this shift and now win this game. So it's a strengths-based model, and I have a book that I wrote that
Do
talks
you
about
have a copy of your book with you?
yeah.
Hold it up
So
so we can,
you see it,
yes, we can see that. Yes, wonderful.
yeah.
Where can we get this book? Where is it available?
Amazon, Amazon mostly.
Okay. I will
Yeah,
include a link in the description, or, some way that we can make it
yeah,
available to the, to
yeah,
our viewers. Well, what I like
yeah. And
about,
so,
I'm sorry, what I
please,
like about what you're saying, and this game plan in particular, is that all the power for the the responsibility and the results are within the person, him or herself. So they're not reaching out to a, an, another trusted person, which is important to be, you need to have trusted people around you, resources. But you have the ability, because you recognize as the player that you are the one who's determining your moves. And you can use the resources that are available to you, as long as you want to acknowledge honestly, at least to yourself, what game you are actually playing. And I think that's genius. That is genius.
yes, yes, absolutely. And once you can name the game, yeah, they say I learned a long time ago, name it and you can tame it.
Mm.
Right? Identify and assess what game. There's an acronym that is the subtitle of the book, All In, ALL-IN, where you assess your game, you leverage your strengths and inner resources, you locate yourself right, within the game, and you locate where you are in terms of the impact of the game. The people in my life want to see me win, right? So when I'm doing things that brings about these performance gaps, my wife in particular, she starts to look at me kind of funny, like, you know better than that, Joshua, right? And then so you're locating yourself. And then the I is for integrate. Like, let's bring all those, once you've sort of gone through the process, let's start to integrate those stories, those messages, those thoughts and feelings into yourself and your spirit. And then what naturally sort of emerges is a new narrative. And that's the end for new,
Mm.
right? So all in is the process that we use to, and because it's non-pathologizing, um, it's just a framework for people can really look at how they've set their lives up,
Mm.
and people discover and uncover all these things, all these games. Sometimes they're games within games,
Mm.
right? I was this minister I was working with a number of years ago. She was near retirement, and the pastor was expecting her to sort of come into full-time ministry, but she kept sort of prolonging her retirement year after year. There was something that would, interrupt. And then she realized that she was playing the yes, God, but game. Yes, God, I know you're all in all and everything, but right. And she realized that she didn't want to do ministry the way she had seen other ministers do ministry. And that was sort of her. And so she told the truth to herself, told one on herself, and then created the yes, God and game. right? It was, yes, God, I'm fully prepared for whatever's next, and I'm going to choose to do it my way, right? So that freed her up, and she retired and is doing ministry her way, right?
Mhm.
Not being in front of the sheep every week, as it were, the shepherd, leading the flock.
Right.
So it's a very powerful process and modality. I'm very proud of. I'm looking to create a game board and other ancillary things that would have it be sort of it's in its own ecosystem of coaching and counseling.
Well, that is a very creative and impressive program. And I'm really, I think we're all appreciative of the fact you've been willing to share so much of who you are in this conversation, um, and that you are such a resource to people. I would say though that everything that you do is based on your ability to build relationships with people from a very uh, integrity filled space, and that that allows everything that you have developed, and that you are currently working with to flow. Um, I just really want to thank you for taking the time to share all of this evening. Um, I think we should do another session.
We certainly can. Thank you. It's really been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed our time here today.
Well, anytime that you have a few minutes to spare, you have a standing invitation to come back and share some more. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. So have a great evening, and thank you once again. Bye bye. Okay, we're done.
Uh,
Joshua, that was wonderful. I love talking to you.
Likewise,
Oh,
you're
this
you're you're able to bring out um like all this stuff.
a lot of good stuff. You left me no choice. It's like, oh, more and more and more. What I'd like to do is get you to send me a couple of notes with the All-In an acronym and the full title of your book, so I can put that in the description. And then the next step is for me to write up an introduction description, which will be attached to the video that Michael sends to you. And
Yes.
I'll send it to you with a release. And if you approve it, if you or if you don't and you want to do something different, then we'll take it from there. But it will not be posted anywhere until you say it's meets your standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I can see that's important to you, and I'm okay with,
yeah, well, it's important to you too, I would think, because I've had some folks say, you know what, I didn't really mean to say what I said, so let's take that down. So I've had a couple where I thought they were really good conversations, and they just didn't want them to go public. So uh, I um, I don't have that sense from our conversation, but it's just standard. I do that.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so any questions? Any concerns? Yeah. Oh,
No,
this
I wish we had gotten to the art barbershop art piece we didn't talk about.
okay. That's when you got to
Uh,
come back.
yeah.
Definitely, you got to come back for that.
I
Um,
always I always remember you in that moment when we were wrapping up over at I forget the name of the place, but
Now it's under new ownership, but it's the same
yeah,
spot. Yeah.
yeah. And I had set several intentions for the day,
Mm,
and I was trained at Landmark to, when your intentions have been met, when people speak your
mm,
intentions,
yes.
right? It comes out of their mouths, right? So one of them I think was, create a safe space and that kind of thing. And
Yes.
you said, um, when we were in the Four Corners and you were in a group with folks, you all had talked about whatever the experience of the day, and you didn't. I don't get the sense that you all had chosen a spokesperson,
Mm.
right? And I was not too far sitting away from you, and I was like, okay, well, how about this group? You ready? And then they all sort of looked around and you started to speak and you stopped for a moment and you was like, you know what? It's safe here. I'll just share. So my intention came out of your mouth
Hmm. And
of creating a safe space, for people.
I think intentions always come out. And I think that's the piece that people don't always realize. But
Mm,
it's that projection that the intent, you, whether you recognize it or not, on some level, your intention manifests, and the it's more immediate. And when you acknowledge it to yourself and you're clear about what it is you want to accomplish, then it really, to me, adds to the integrity. And that was the full message that I got from the session that I was in, that what your intention was was for all of us to find an expression of safety to deal with whatever was going to come up as a result of being exposed to the artwork and the process, and different people expressed in different ways. But but the environment, I keep trying to say aura, that's not the right word.
mm,
Atmosphere, the atmosphere was palpable. It was,
mm,
it just, float into the space. And I watched the combinations of people, some of whom didn't know each other at all, many of whom didn't know each other. It's like, oh, this is really, it was just it was very palpable.
yeah,
And that was clearly part of your intention as well. So, being intentionally in to intend intentionally, I guess, is even more powerful, because
yeah,
applying your own game plan, you know, that was the demonstration, I would think, for you of how that works, uh, because you set it up for us to have that kind of experience. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I think it's genius. I really do. I think it's genius.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, psychodrama does have a mystical side to it,
Mm,
where uh, the originator 100 years ago said that we're gods because we
mm,
can create and we have spontaneity, which is everywhere in nature, right? We are gods, and he was that part had to be sort of squelched. He was a psychiatrist, J.L. Marino, and so he brought forth these tools of psychodrama and sociodrama where people can tell the subjective truth of their reality in action, right? And he was sort of in opposition to Freud at the time. Freud was like, sit on this couch and let me analyze your dreams. He said to Freud, you, sir, analyze people's dreams. I help people to dream again.
mm, mm, mm.
Right. And,
I
you
think.
know, um, yeah, so it meets at the intersection of psychology and the stage.
Mm,
And the work I've been doing with educators for the last 3 years have really brought those pieces to restorative practices. So, they get to put their whole selves into the conversation. Put your laptop away. You don't have to take any notes. You just bring yourself to, and you're going to learn, right? Way beyond what you can think,
mm.
about this process, right? So, um, I am interested. Deborah Ruffin, Debbie,
Yes.
from church, right? Before she made a transition,
Yes.
she said she was in her element. She was feeding people, right?
Mm,
So I'm in line and she goes, hey, Joshua, what's up? And she packs some macaroni and cheese on my plate and she goes, hey, I had a dream about you last night or recently. And she put some veggies on. And then I was like, It's Anne. So Joshua, get out of here, man. And then I was like, wait a minute, you just gonna leave me hanging like that? She said, okay, you are going to be speaking in front of more and more people.
Mm.
And then she goes, next. I'm like, Debbie, you crazy. And
Ah,
so, and that happened recently,
mm,
and it was totally unplanned. It was spontaneous
hmm,
and very creative. So, J.L. Marino's sort of um, his statement to the world, right, was who shall survive is the person or the people who are creative and spontaneous.
mm.
I mean, we've had in 3 years, 4 years ago, when COVID happened, if you didn't pivot to online, you didn't survive.
And survive. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So anyway,
Well, like I said, we have to do another conversation. If you can find the time, you let me know when.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I can even do it when I'm over there.
Okay, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
But um, what occurred to me, and I'll stop talking. But when you mentioned J.L. Moreno, um, his thinking is less Western,
yeah,
uh, which to me is always a critical element in how society functions. Western culture, to me in general, I find um, to be bereft of a lot of human values. It's hierarchical and
yeah,
it's disconnected from nature.
yeah.
And because of that, I think we're going through a lot of the stuff that we're experiencing now because people don't see that they're part of life, and the emphasis on material things that are created in service to them as opposed to being connected to the planet. Folks are talking about going to Mars. It's a dead planet. They could, we're living on a planet. Why you got to go to a dead planet? Let's fix this one. It doesn't
Right.
in the condition it's in, and it's that kind of to me that mindset. So, um, well, that could be a whole other conversation. But what I'm saying is, I like what you do because it really helps everyone to reconnect. And it starts from within, starting from, well, what truth am I telling myself? Because even if you
Absolutely.
don't know that that's your truth, that is what it is. And
That's
being
right.
able to, and it can be hard to nail it down sometimes, you know,
Hmm.
because you tell
Hmm.
yourself you think certain things, but the evidence is in how you actually are operating in the world. Um, so get your calendar out and let me know when you have more time, because I'm looking forward to just, having more conversations. I think this is just wonderful.
Okay, no doubt. Absolutely.
All righty. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to, bring up later on, just,
Mhm.
give it a go. Let me know.
Yep, will do. I got one more next week, Wednesday, I'll have my psychodrama on site, which is um that I will be evaluated by. So it's my last hoop, psychodrama hoop I got to jump through to become a full-fledged trainer,
Mm.
psychodrama trainer.
Mhm.
And that's going to take place next Wednesday. So I'm sort of preparing for that. So after that, I'll reach back out to you.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. And there's no rush. There's no
Yep.
rush. Not on this
Hmm.
end. Because my
Hmm.
parents supposed to be getting ready to go to Mexico. We've been to the
Yes.
consulate 3 times. We hope that this next trip we'll have everything in order.
All right.
So
Nice.
so all righty.
All right.
And tell Stephanie I said hello.
I will. All right, brother Mike. Know you out there. Peace and blessings, you all.
Okay, he can't hear you because when he comes off, I think he just shuts out completely. But I'll tell him.
Oh, okay. All right. Take
Take
care. Yeah,
take care.
Emma. Bye bye.